there's some money in this real estate game. And I know how the marketing works. So, the Airbnb, they revolutionized the hotel world. They don't actually have any hotels. Same as like Uber revolutionized the taxi world. They don't have any taxis. But you need to think about what you want to do, right? And that's whether you're buying, property or stocks. When I'm investing in something that's not going to take away my focus.
Welcome to Mamwa. I'm Gordy, your host, and this is the podcast that includes you into my most famous song lyrics.
He's a middle-aged man with an attitude, and he didn't even have one till he met you.
That's right, I'm the middle-aged man, and my attitude will chatter us through all things that I'm passionate about, from spirituality, the gym and fitness, food, travelling, and music or movies. Quick disclaimer, this list is not exhaustive. So you can get on or you can get off and join us for the episodes that you like the sounds of. Dip in or dip out, as long as you keep dipping. Either way, we've got something to say and we're going in 3, 2, 1 way to get your own dream home, or many ways of turning around a distressed property. We have a guest with us today who's got a passion for helping people and businesses to succeed. He's also got a history of having a youth in the Australian bush. He's lived in 11 countries. He's running an international business, who's very busy, and he's joining us here today on Mamwa to share his expertise and help you all in your own real estate futures. So welcome to the show, Kris Reid. How are you?
Hey, great, Gordon. Thanks very much for having me along.
You're more than welcome. I'm so excited about today's conversation. You're in our side of Europe at the moment, over in Spain. What are you doing there, firstly?
Yeah, I live here with my wife and my family. Got 4 kids. We move pretty slow because there's a little army of us. But just enjoying life, enjoying the beautiful weather in Spain. It's always sunny here.
Perfect. So I thought we'll get started because you've got a bit of a varied background. So to take us into the real estate, I mentioned your youth in the outback, I'll call it. Tell me a bit about that before we get started.
Yeah, I'm originally from near Brisbane, Australia. It was the outback when I was a kid. Australia's grown a hell of a lot in the last lot of years. But when I was a kid, I grew up on a dirt road, and there's constantly kangaroos jumping around. Every now and then you'd get an emu. But Brisbane's grown so big that even out there is near suburbia now. But I eventually moved to the city. Felt like New York City to me. I was just a little country boy. Brisbane seemed so freaking big.
Yeah.
They studied software engineering, and I was working with this older guy. He must have been like late 20s or something. He seemed like so old to me, and he was from London. And we'd have lunch together, and he kept telling me about London, and I was like, wow, that place sounds freaking amazing. I was so freaking green. And before I knew it, I quit my job and was on a plane to London, and that started my overseas career.
Oh, wow. So what age did you leave? I
was like 24, 25, something like that.
When you went to Brisbane?
Well, when I was early, a few years earlier when I moved to Brisbane, but early 20s when I moved to London.
So what was the transition like then? Because I'm a small town boy as well. And I loved the idea of the city, and I just couldn't get there quick enough. So how did you feel when you went from one extreme to the other?
Oh yeah, it's eye-opening. You realize how naive you are. I knew nothing about anything. Brisbane was big, and then when I moved to London afterwards, I was like, holy cow! I had a very strong Australian accent at the time. And even British people had trouble understanding me, so I had to really learn to squish it down, get rid of the Australianisms and talk a little clearer. But there's beauties of living in big cities. I can't imagine I'd ever live in a place like London again. It's so freaking big. But there's also advantages of living in little towns, though it can be a little isolating.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier before we started recording about your gaming addiction. Was that during your youth, or did you get into gaming a bit later?
That's what really got me in. I was a bit of a nerd stuck in the countryside playing on computers, and that's what led me to study software engineering originally.
Brilliant. And so what was your favorite thing before? Because I know there's like a history to becoming a software engineer and like coming out of that as well. So what was your favorite thing about it, being a software engineer, and what?
I mean, building software is pretty fun, and you can lose yourself in coding, right? Like you put on your headset and you listen to some music, and you just hours just disappear because you're like so immersed in it, because you have to hold lots of different pieces of puzzle together, right? So you're holding a lot of information in your head at once, and you need to be really focused. It's hard to think about anything else. So that's really beautiful. But then, when I lived in London, I worked in finance, some of the biggest software projects in Europe, and it's pretty soul destroying, right? Because you're working for these giant companies that, well, it's just rich people helping rich people get richer, and that's not that interesting.
Yeah. And then you mentioned though also that you've made a lot of money as a software engineer. So that kind of changed. What was it that changed that journey for you?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to learn that life's not just about making money. You want to do something that helps, well, that is fulfilling. Like one of the first jobs I worked on in London was the biggest project in Europe. It was in central London, 400 developers. Average day rate was freaking huge. They spent so much money, and like I realized that you're just a cog in a giant machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can work your ass off and no one cares. You can do nothing and no one cares.
Yeah.
Like it's just managers trying to like work out how they can get more funding and BS their boss, and then everyone's BSing each other. It's just not an industry that I enjoy being in. It's an industry that pays real well though. And I luckily, made more money than I could spend, which is pretty cool. And then I lost my job in the global financial crisis, and went traveling the world and went, well, what else is there? And that was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. So I had a bit of a turning point when I hit 40, because I like you say, like money isn't everything, but at some point in your life, you do kind of think, well, money isn't everything, but it helps. Like it gets you.
Okay.
It can create happiness if you use it in the right way, and that's going to kind of come back to what we're going to talk about in a second. Because in my 40s, I'd spent 20 years working 7 days a week, not for the money, but because I always turned my passion into a job. And that's just because I was enjoying it so much. I was doing it all the time, and then I ended up getting paid for it, just the way that life happened. But I decided I wanted some life back, so I wanted to kind of I didn't want a 9 to 5, but I wanted a job where I could make the same I was making over a 7 day week. And I just thought about it a bit more logically, where I was like, let's work less for the same amount of money, and I'll keep my passions as hobbies. And like, I don't need to stop doing what I'm enjoying, but let's get that enjoyment back and keep the money coming. So that kind of leads me into what I was going to ask you about starting up your own real estate business. And is it Icons of Real Estate? Am I right?
It is indeed Icons of Real Estate, the #1 real estate podcast network on the planet.
So how did that all start for you then?
Yeah, so that was quite a long journey. I finished up in my career in London and went traveling the world going, what the hell am I going to do with my life? I played around online, built some websites, learned some digital marketing, SEO, and went, no, I'm pretty good at this, and this is pretty fun. And ended up working with this real estate agent. Well, she's got a team. And the first year we worked together, she did $53 million in production, which means she sold $53 million worth of property. Next year she did 158 million. The next year she did 612, and the year after she did a ridiculous $1,066 million in production.
Amazing.
And average take home is 2.5% of that, and 2.5% of $1 billion is a pretty damn nice paycheck. And I went, hey, there's some money in this real estate game, and I know how the marketing works. So I learned more about that. Thankfully, to my parents moved me to the US when I was a kid, and I had a social security number. They were giving those out to everyone in the 80s. And that is really the only requirement you need to get a license in the US to become a real estate agent. And I love having the freedom to be able to work and live anywhere I like, which generally, if you're a real estate agent, you need to be where the houses are. And so I'm licensed in the US. I don't live in the US, but I have a team of agents in the US. We help them with their marketing. They sell the houses, and we both get paid, which is pretty nice.
So I'm assuming you were living in the US when you started, and was it just yourself? Did you already have a team?
I've never lived in the US other than when I was a kid with my parents.
Okay.
I mean, the US, I think, is by far the best country on the earth if you want to make money. It's where I do my business, and I make USD, and I like that. But it's not the greatest country in the world for culture and for raising a family, which is why I live in Europe. It's just I work with Americans is why I want to get licensed there, and for that reason, I think that they're more entrepreneurial and they want to invest in growing their business. I'm from Australia, and I think Australians are slightly better than Brits, and Brits are terrible. Like, I've done a little bit of, that's probably why the British economy said that, terrible.
Yeah.
But like, Brits and Australians are just not as entrepreneurial and not as growth-minded as Americans. And so they're much harder to work with, especially when you're doing marketing, which is not something you need. It's a nice to have, and if it works well, you grow really well. But over the years, I found it very, very difficult to sell to Brits or Aussies. So I focus 100% on the US.
So if you don't live there, how do you manage a real estate business without the tours? How does that work?
Oh, I mean, that's the beauty of the internet, my friend. I mean,
yeah.
So, I work with a cloud brokerage. It's a fantastic brokerage. If you think of like, the Airbnb, they revolutionized the hotel world. They don't actually have any hotels. Same as like Uber revolutionized the taxi world. They don't have any taxis. So this company has been revolutionizing the real estate world. They don't have any offices. They're a total cloud-based brokerage, and they're fantastic. And so we build our agents, we build our organization, and we do what we do with other people. Some people pay us directly to help generate them leads and business and help them grow their real estate team. We have our own team where we do that stuff directly for them, and then we get a share of the sales.
That's so good. So if I'm trying to phrase this so that the listeners aren't getting confused, because I'm jumping about everywhere, so I apologize for that. But how did the podcasting help you as you started that journey, having had all that knowledge from helping other people? If that makes sense.
So I wish I was the most brilliant businessman in the world, but a lot of it just comes through happenstance. So that agent that I was telling you about that had that growth arc, she's what cemented our foray into real estate, because I was like, wow, this is such an awesome market. I knew nothing about real estate beforehand. That you live in a house, that's about it. But I went, wow, this is a really great market, and it's one that's not going to disappear, right? People are going to still live in houses for quite a while to be, I guess. And so we used to really just do digital marketing and SEO specifically, search engine optimization. And it's pretty expensive, and it takes a long time to get to results. It's a really great investment, but it's a long-term investment. You'd be spending $5,000 a month for months before you can expect anything. And not that many agents can afford to spend $5,000 a month. It's a good chunk of change, right? And so we could only work with top-tier agents. And that's why we launched our Icons Real Estate brand, which helps us build those relationships, right? And through our podcast, our Icons Real Estate podcast, because you're bringing onto the show those top-tier agents. You're celebrating those people. You're building a network of these people, and then you can introduce your services, and that worked really, really well. And then someone asked us, it was on our show, Matthias Baker's his name, actually. He's a probate realtor in Beverly Hills. He's like, man, I had such a good time on your show. Can you produce a podcast for me? I'm like, I guess we're already have everything set up. We able to do all the editors and everything. Sure, why not? And he was really happy with what we were doing with him. And someone else asked, hey, can you produce a podcast for me? And I'm like, well, yeah, we can. We do it for Matthias. And then before long, we're like, wow, there's a real demand for this. And man, it sells itself. Podcasting is still a very rising trend. It's way easier for us to produce. It's way easier for us to manage. And it's way easier for us to sell. So, I wish I had have moved into it years ago, but it's been going fantastic.
Brilliant. So let's just go down this road for a while. For anyone over here who are in real estate, like property agents, landlords, all those types of people. So what are the key takeaways for having a podcast? Why should they start a podcast to promote their businesses or their incomes?
I mean, what I'm about to say, I'm sure would apply for most businesses, but definitely residential real estate in the United States. Some crazy statistic, like 87% of transactions come from referrals. Like 87%, it's massive.
Yeah.
And so building those referral partners is really, really important. So what we teach our clients is it's like, okay, who's your perfect referral partner? Is it a mortgage broker, a title company, a builder, the local pool man, whoever? Okay, and then let's build out that list and get those people onto your podcast, right? Because then you're building a relationship with that person that's your ideal referral partner. And so this is, before the promotion, before anyone listening to podcast, imagine that's all bonus. You imagine no one even listens to it. You got 52 potential referral partners that you're speaking to every year. Like what a great relationship builder that is alone. You do one a week, that's 52. Imagine if only 10% of them start referring your business. Like that's a lot of new referral partners. And that's, without doing any social posts, without any SEO, without anyone even listening to your podcast. It's like, man, that's going to make you money, right? And for the amount of investment that it costs to put together a podcast, well, it pays for itself. And that's definitely why we like real estate too, because, well, when you sell a house, you get paid pretty well. And so we don't need to help our clients sell too many houses for it to pay for itself.
Yeah. I think over here, one of the big struggles that I'm aware of in property management or property owning when you're leasing is trying to get people to pay their rent. It's been hiked up so much over here that people can barely afford to get their shopping, never mind pay their rent. And it's just gone a bit bonkers, the property market over here.
Cost of living crisis worldwide is not nice. The billionaires keep getting richer and richer, and everyone else stays the same. Eh?
Yeah, literally. And I can't see an out for it at this stage because it just hasn't turned around in over a year.
I just for curiosity, I went and looked at how much software jobs pay in London these days, and they pay pretty much the same as when I was there 20 years ago. It's like that just hasn't gone up at all. But you can be sure as hell that everything else in London's more expensive.
Yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it. I was a fitness instructor for a number of years, and even before I became a fitness instructor, 10 years before that, they were being paid the same as when I started. 8 years later, I stopped being an instructor, and they were still being paid the same. The prices never go up unless you're giving it out. So, I mean, how much do you know about the I'm going to say British rather than European, the British property market?
I wouldn't know a lot, to be honest. I focus on the US. I try and keep all my specialty there because, I mean, people say, hey, why don't you expand other places? I'm like, well, riches are in the niches, right? And the US market is the biggest in the world. It's so freaking huge. The UK is it's probably not as big as California. Yeah. So it's like, you might as well put all your knowledge and focus on one market, which is why the US is such a bloody great place to do business, because they have all of the companies fighting for that. That even when I look at Australia, it's like Australia is so freaking tiny and the market is so tiny. Like I would never bother.
And you've lived in 11 countries. So were you running your business whilst living in those countries?
I mean, I was born in Australia. The first country I lived in, other than that, was in the US when I was just a little kid with my parents. But then, as an adult, moved to London. I had a few professional jobs around Europe, in Ireland and in Belgium. And then chasing ladies, moved to Eastern Europe, Russia, and Latvia. And then, post global financial crisis, I went, man, I'm out of this software game. It's driving me nuts. And so I moved to first Cambodia, then to the Philippines, then to Vietnam, where I met my wife. And I can't remember how many countries that's up to, but then we just moved to Spain. Well, coming up on 2 years.
Amazing. So, I mean, talking about your international business then, like you must have so many tips for people who are buying and selling. And I thought that's a really good way to steer the conversation, because regardless of where anybody tunes in from, they can kind of take some of your advice and take some of your expertise in these areas. So the first thing I wanted to kind of ask about was, for first-time buyers, I mean, let's put the cost of living crisis aside for a sec, because so many people are struggling to find their down payments. And that's kind of a separate conversation for every single person, couple, family. But how the home buying process, what would you advise to anyone who's kind of about to embark on that journey?
Yeah, so I got two thoughts on that. The first being, the US is a much more mature market in real estate than everywhere else in the world that I know. They got much better technology, much better systems. Even just their licensing is better. And one thing that they usually always have is a buyer agent, which just makes so much sense to me. I was just in a real estate event last week here in Spain, and it's very uncommon that people use a buyer agent here. And so there's just the one agent handling the deal, and they're handling both sides of it, right? They're the person that's buying and selling. And whose side are they really on? They're on the person that's selling it side. The buyer's not being represented at all.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. It's like, this is the biggest purchase you probably ever made. If you're a first-time homeowner, then it's the biggest purchase you've ever made, and you don't have a professional representing you. Like, that's freaking crazy. It's like going to court and one guy's got a lawyer and you're representing yourself. Yeah. That's just foolish. And people are often worried about what percentage that you have to pay a buyer's agent or a listing agent. And it's like, well, they get you a better deal. Like if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right? And like, okay, you might save half a percentage point on your contract, but then you bought the wrong house, or you'll pay for it in other ways because you didn't have the right representation. But another thing about buying a house, a really smart friend of mine once said, the more you have, the more you have to protect. And last year I lived in the countryside here in Spain, because it was near my kids' school. We were brand new to Spain, and we're like, okay, this is near the kids' school. We'll live out here. And I bought a car because we were in the countryside. And my wife and I did not like it at all. It was so isolating. And this year we've moved to the city, and we're much happier. And I just never use the car. I'm like, I'm going to get rid of it. And just recently, someone broke a window on my car, trying to see if there was any goodies or whatever. And I was like, that's kind of a good thing that happened, because I was toing and throwing, should I sell it or not? And then that happened. I'm like, yeah, get rid of it. I don't want to have the hassle holding this crap. And, my wife and I sometimes talk about buying a house, and then we get to that same thing. It's like, no, I want the freedom. I want to be able to pack up my bags tomorrow and go to wherever I want. And renting gives you that freedom. Buying a house, well, it costs a whole lot of money. And it can make sense. I mean, if you're not going anywhere, but that's not the lifestyle that we live. You know,
Yeah.
we've lived in lots of places, and we want to live in plenty of places more. And so, buying a house for us would, like, investment properties are a different thing, because you don't have that emotional attachment to those.
Yeah.
So yeah, two things. If you live in the one little village and you're going to live there for the rest of your life, probably buy a house. But if you're nomadic, then yeah, stick to investment properties.
So you must see a lot of different ways that people save for down payments, or where they kind of get their down payments from. Like, just going back to what I was saying, like over here, it's a massive struggle for, it's probably the same everywhere, but to get onto that first property ladder. Like, what are some of the ways you see people getting that first down payment that might help
Wow.
anybody listening?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's difficult everywhere. You definitely hear that everywhere. And just recently, my younger cousin bought a house, and she was bagging about how, well, she's not happy with it because she's been living with her mother, who has a very nice house. And it's like, well, it's the first place you can get. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's difficult. People compare like our current generational lives to like our parents and our grandparents. It's like, yeah, they didn't have round the world trips to Bali and holidays across the world, and big screen TVs and fancy cars and stuff. So like, I don't know, we enjoy life a lot more. Like I remember as a kid, we never went to restaurants. My parents never took me to restaurants. I went to a restaurant one time when I was like 16 or something. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I take my kids to the restaurant a couple times a week. It's not special at all. So it depends on what sort of life you want to have, and how much income you make. But yeah, like everyone should be living within their means. Like the more money you can be tucking away each week, the better it is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the difficulties. Like, we're a consumers society now. Like, we are just consumers all the time. We're being sold to every time we wake up and look out a window or walking down the street. And just kind of a bit of background. Like, I used to have a house that I bought with my partner, and when that relationship ended, I ended up with nothing, and I had to start again. And the market had crashed, the economy had changed, and I stopped everything. I didn't go out for meals anymore, like you say. I didn't go clubbing with my friends. I stopped having to do things. I didn't go on holidays, and like 5 years later, I managed to get back on the property market. But sometimes you just have to make sacrifices, and it's difficult. Of course it's difficult, but like getting up that property ladder, I'm on the property ladder on my own now. I didn't have to depend on a partner or a relationship to do that together. So it's different for everyone, but there's sacrifice involved. And I think young people at the moment don't like having to sacrifice, because the world's a bit shit anyway, and sacrifice makes it worse.
Yeah, you got to find your hard, right? It's either gonna be hard now or hard later. I try to make sure that as you get older, you can start, like when you're 20, it's really hard to imagine being 30. When you're 40, you can start to imagine being 50, and then you can imagine being really old.
Yeah.
And you go, man, I want to make sure that I'm not 70 and looking for money or scrimping and saving, and so build that security. And that you should think about investments and having multiple ones, and ones that are going to pay for it. And what my wife's Vietnamese, and like what I said to her last week, and she said, worst case scenario, we can always move to the province in Vietnam, and life will be sweet. And you're like, that's true. Yeah, life there's pretty cheap.
Yeah, I've heard. I've never been, but I've heard.
Yeah, in the province, like it's really cheap. It's fresh food, fresh air. It's all clean and nice, and geez, you could live a decent life on $200-300 a month.
Yeah, amazing. I might try it in a few years. So you've got a lot of knowledge about that pre-approval process, and I mean, by all means, focus on the US for this, but any of the US listeners will be able to. What are your kind of takeaways on getting through that process, as easily and smoothly as possible.
I mean, it's like anywhere, right? You just got to show that you have money. I mean, like I use my credit cards all the time. Like, using credit cards is a really, really a lot of benefit. They protect you too. Amex, which, I use because I get points, but Amex is so good too to protect you. If you have something that charges your card, you just call them, they deal with it, and they're really nice. There's this freaking supermarket down the road here called El Corte Inglés, weird name, and they overcharged me something the other week, and I was using a debit card, and it was 15 euros. And I sent them a message, I sent them a receipt, and I'm like, you overcharged me 15 euros. And they're like, no, we didn't. I'm like, they had refunded it and then charged it back. And I'm like, explain this. And they're like total assholes about it. And like, oh, call your bank or whatever. I'm like, if I had to use my Amex card like I usually do, Amex would have sorted it out. But I use a bank card and it doesn't. So like using your credit all the time protects you. Plus it builds up your credit score. Just make sure that you're paying it off. So it's like, if you make $2,000 a month or whatever, spend all that money on your credit card. You get points for it as well. I put as much of my business expenses through my Amex as I can. At the moment, I got a family of 6. I got enough Amex points for 3 round the world trips. I need to double it, and then I got 6. Yeah. But it's like, that's just stuff that I'm going to buy anyway. Yeah. And it just goes through my Amex. It protects me, and I earn points. Like that's what they say is like people that pay cash, credit card points are a tax on people that pay cash. Because if you and I are both buying something, say we go buy a bottle of wine for 10 pounds, the shop has had to increase the price to cover my credit card points because they can't charge me extra for it. And especially when you use an Amex card, it costs the merchant extra money to use. But the reason why merchants accept them is it's usually people with a higher net worth have Amex cards. And so that's why people are willing to accept it. But that extra cost goes on to people that pay cash. So as much as my uncle complains that everyone should be using cash, I don't think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I heard some great advice years ago. I went to it was a conference, like a presentation about like getting into investment for property, and they were talking about using other people's money by buying investment properties using credit cards, and that was really interesting. So I mean, I didn't get into property at that stage. I was only in my 20s, and I was like, this is a scam. This isn't that. This isn't this. And so I just kind of went out, and I was like, what a waste of my time. But there was logic behind it. But that kind of leads me to some questions about investment strategies. So what are some of the investment strategies that you've seen? Things like flipping houses or rental properties or...
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can do those things. Like I got a friend here that he's flipped like 6 houses last year, and now he's doing it on scale by using other people's money. He's raised a couple million euros so far, and he's going to raise more. But that's not really an investment strategy. That's a job. Yeah. And like he's doing that full time. I think of investments as stuff that you don't do. It's that you put your money over there and it works for itself. And with that, you need to focus on what's going to generate you the most wealth. Most of my money goes back into my business because I know that I'm invested in my business, it's going to have the most growth, and that's the best return for me. It's also, a little risk because if I screw it up, then my business goes bang and I got no return on that investment. So generally, what I do is just buy an exchange traded fund. In the US and Australia. That's where I have most of my income coming in Australia or the US, and I just buy the exchange, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. The Australian Stock Exchange, it averages a 13% return over the last 110 years. That's its average, 13%, which is a pretty freaking nice return, right? Yeah. And so you buy the same amount every week, and on average, over 110 years, you're going to get a 13% return, which is pretty hard to beat. And I put the numbers in. My sister She lives in Brisbane, has forever. And, her house price has, the property market in Brisbane's, it just got exploded over the last bunch of years. And I put into a calculator, how much she bought the house for, what it's currently worth, and what that growth rate is. And it's less than the ASX. So it's not that crazy. The ASX is growing more. Plus, then you have that money that you weren't able to use. So if you put that same deposit that she had into the ASX, it would have had a faster growth. Yeah, you need to pay rent somewhere then, but you also, you have to pay maintenance on the house. You don't have that flexibility. So if you look at the investment either way, it's not that different. So it might seem good on paper to buy a house. It might not be the best investment. It really, really depends on what you want out of life. And, I like liquidity. I like to have money in, well, I generally use Vanguard to manage my funds because they're really, really low fees and it's liquid. If I need to take money out, I can take it out today.
Yeah.
Like there's no problem. If you put an extra 100 grand onto your mortgage, it's probably pretty hard to get that money back out if you need it. Not that you should need money from your investments, but yeah.
Sometimes we do. Life happens, doesn't it? And
yeah.
But I'll back up what you say about stocks because, like in the last 12 months, there was that across all stocks 144% return in 12 months, and obviously about 50% of those were under by the end of that year. But it was that other 50% that if you look at it as a risk, you'll never make any money on it. And it's just how you kind of perceive that scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I can't remember this story exactly, but it was Warren Buffett, put up a gamble of like, hey, can anyone beat me in investing? I'll pay the winner $1 million. And there was only one guy that actually took him up on it. And Buffett won by investing in the S&P. And yeah, like if you're, I used to work in finance in London. I used to work with all the brokers and they're spending, they have unlimited resources basically to analyze the market all day long. It's like, you're not going to beat these guys. That's what they study and do. And they have all the tools and they can't beat the market. They can't, so it's like, why would you even try?
Yeah.
Just buy a fund and go for it. Like the S&P 500, right? The top 500 companies in the US. Yeah. In 10 years time, some of them are going to be gone, but the majority will go up, so if you just went and picked some, you might pick one that goes out of business and then you've lost all your money.
Yeah.
But if you buy a little bit in every one of them, which is what an exchange traded fund is, you're going to go up on average.
Yeah.
And that's what security is. And you don't have to freaking worry about it.
Yeah.
I want to keep my hair and keep it with some color.
Lucky you. I lost mine. And it's all grey.
Yeah.
But that brings me to, like, I've only just heard of this when I was doing a bit of research on real estate. So REITs, real estate investment trusts, do you know how they work?
Oh, not only enough to sound stupid. Yeah, but it's basically the same as any fund, right?
Okay.
You're putting money into a fund and then they're buying stuff. Like even Germany, a giant percentage of the rental market's owned by one giant company that has hundreds of thousands of properties.
Okay.
So it's basically a fund that just owns lots of houses. They can do whatever they want. They can buy multifamily buildings. They can buy, commercial buildings. But it's basically that you put money into a fund and then they buy stuff with it. Even like that's what my friend here is doing. He's just raised a couple of million, and he already has relationships with lenders, and he's flipping houses. So he's not looking to get a mortgage for 20 years. He's looking to hold a house for 180 days. And so they buy the house, they then, revamp it and it's sold. And so they're able to pay back that money in 180 days. And so they, if he's got 10 million that he's able to that he's got in cash, well, they'll give him, a multiple of that. So he might have 30 or 40 million that he can then actually buy properties with.
So then, when it comes to making decisions, what decisions would you, or what advice would you give to people who are getting into this? Like, what are some risks and successes that they should look out for and be aware of?
Getting into life, getting into business,
No,
getting into what?
getting into property development, property investment.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on what you want to do, right? It really, that's the main thing when you think about any investment. What is your goal?
Yeah.
Do you want to actually be managing that thing? Like having a rental property, it's not passive. It's a pain in the ass. The lady that I first mentioned that helped me foray into real estate, she teaches people how to run Airbnbs. She's in 1 year, she sold $1 billion worth of property to sell Airbnbs. And, she, makes a lot of money and she buys a lot of houses. In fact, I saw someone comment on Facebook one time. They're like, does anyone even buy a property sight unseen? She's like, yeah, bought like 100 of them this year. Yeah, well, when you're buying on that scale, you don't have time to go visit every property. But you need to think about what you want to do, right? And that's whether you're buying, property or stocks. I want, when I'm investing in something that's not going to take away my focus. The thing that makes my income is my business, and I need to be focused on that. Every now and then I get a little greedy when you see like Bitcoin news, and I'm like, maybe I should learn something about this Bitcoin. And then I'm like, I don't know shit about cryptocurrency. It all seems like a scam to me. Maybe it's legit, maybe it's not. I don't freaking know. But like, if I take my focus away from my business, now I'm invested in that, and my business is not going to have the love that it wants. That's why I just go with exchange traded funds. Put money over there. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it makes it like a lot of these cryptocurrencies, like people are just creating currencies, like off the cuff, making money and then just canceling the currency. Like,
I don't understand any of it. It's
bonkers.
Boggles the mind.
Yeah, but
BlackRock just bought like $100 billion worth of Bitcoin. So
oh, really?
I don't know, but you think like maybe they know what they're doing, but then maybe they don't. What was that guy's name? The guy that wrote the longevity book, David Sinclair.
Okay.
He was a tenured Harvard professor, and I'm like, wow. I mean, like, you got to be legit if you're a tenured Harvard professor, right? He sold his research to GlaxoSmithKline for like $100 million, which is a good chunk of change, and it turned out all to be a scam. And you're like, it's like, you're a pharmaceutical company that just bought something for $100 million.
Yeah.
You'd think you'd do your due diligence. And, I've been following the guy's research for years and doing what he said. And then I'm like, man, I feel like a dope. And then you're like, well, they spent $100 million. I didn't, so maybe they're more dopey.
Yeah.
So you can't believe these big guys either, they're full of shit.
But do you know, like, when it comes to like making money from your properties, like when you sell it on, do you know what you're saying about we buy it and then when we sell it we want to make as much as possible for that equity? And I did a lot of research on things like home staging and making sure that everything impacted on the sale of the property to kind of, I say get rid of it now because it's not mine, but to get rid of it for the highest return. Have you seen any great tips on how to get the most out of your property just when you're trying to offload it?
I mean, to sell it would be a better term, but it's not what I specialize in. But that's exactly why you need a good agent, right?
Yeah. Because
a good agent's going to do that stuff for you. Making sure that you got good staging, that the house looks freaking nice, that it's marketed well. You've probably heard the term for sale by owner, FSBOs, and it's just silly. Like, for the same reason of you should have a professional when you're buying a house, the same as when you're selling a house, because they're going to get you a better price. Because they're going to get in front of more eyeballs. If you're selling your house yourself, how do you know how to market your house? You don't do that all day long, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to get more people, and generally just more people is going to get you a better price, but making the house look nice. You know how silly people can be, and they don't do it professionally, so work with a pro.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, and I've had this conversation a number of times, even when I'm looking for new properties, that people want something that's kind of instant gratification, so to speak. They want something that looks good because it takes the focus off the problem sides of a property, which I just think is crazy. Like, it looks like I could move straight in. I'll take it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. But rather than having to do a little bit of work and make it your own.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what skills you have too, right? My wife, she's built a lot of restaurants. So you're taking an empty space and turn it into a restaurant. That's a lot of work, and you need to be able to, visualize that in your head. As I mentioned, we rent. We don't live in a house that we own for the reasons I mentioned, to be free. And this place was unfurnished. And, when I was looking at it, I can't see it like she can. But she was like, yeah, cool, I'll take it. And she even priced everything out. She's like, yeah, we're going to buy this and this and this and this. It'll cost this much and over this much time. And I'm like, cool, super. And it's great to have a partner that I can trust that does that stuff, Yeah. Don't have to waste my brain cells.
Job done. She just knows what to do. Okay, there's so much helpful information there. Like, talk to me then about where everyone can find out more about you and what you do, and what does your business offer for them?
Yes, I mean, what we specifically do is where we don't help loser real estate agents. Like, if if you don't have a successful business, we can't help you. Like, you need to be able to make money and sell houses, because we will help you. Well, we like to say we help more successful agents become more successful. But really, the framework that we specifically work with real estate agents and in the US. But if you are an agent in the UK or Australia, maybe we can help. But really, any business can help with a podcast. And if you'd like to look at our framework, if you're any other business, not that we can probably help you if you're not real estate, but go to iconsrealestate.com/framework, and you can see the framework that we use, which is exactly what I was talking about before, of how to build referral networks and referral partners. Because, man, that's the secret of doing business. Find people that you like working with. One of our longest clients, he's from Brisbane, and I don't get to Brisbane very often. I went last winter, and it was the first time in 8 years. But he's been a client for more than 10 years now, and he spent nearly $1 million with us. And I think a lot of that comes from trust. Like, when I'm in Brisbane, I have a beer with him, and we're like, get to hang out and know each other, and it's like building that relationship. And that's really what podcasting does. It's a great way to, spend an hour with someone, have a chat, get to learn each other, learn that, especially the internet is so full of crap.
Yeah.
And there's so many people just scamming and lying and cheating. And it's pretty hard to, like, when you speak to someone for any extended period of time, well, you build a lot of trust and a lot of rapport. And that's the beauty of podcasting. And I think it's really valuable tool for any business.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure a lot of you guys listening will be able to use a lot of that advice in your own property and decisions. Get in touch with Kris if you're looking to start a podcast, or you think he can help in any way. Go to the website. I will put all the links in the show notes for you guys as well. And make sure that you leave us a comment. Let us know which tips have been the most useful so that we can continue to bring you the best conversations. You can subscribe or follow the podcast on Spotify or YouTube podcasts. And you can keep the conversation going over on Facebook, Gordy Camp TV, on Instagram and Threads at Gordy Camp. And good luck to you all in your real estate journeys. We will catch you soon here on Mamwa for other self-growth, business growth, and self-discovery. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.